All right, in this video, we're going to have a look at creating and maintaining floor plans in the Sassafras AllSight web interface. So we created a lab map in a previous video. So in this one, we're just going to cover the floor plans themselves. And before we actually create a new one, I'm going to kind of walk you through what these look like and what some of the tools are when you're using them. So this is a floor plan that's been previously built using all objects that are within the tool that are drag and drop onto it. We can see on the left side here, there's the floor plan view, the list view, which is actually the default view of this page before you build out a floor plan, and then an info tab that gives you a projection of popular times in this room, looking back at the last 90 days. Just select the day you want to look at, and you'll see how busy it tends to be throughout the day on that given day. These maps allow you to put in open hours and closed hours. They allow you to reserve the room for particular class periods or certain times of day. And there's a lot of functionality here that we'll talk about, but I just want to kind of give you a quick view of what it looks like when it is configured. So off here to the right, there's a few other icons. This first one is for remote connection. So we have functionality that allows you either to click here to grab any computer or to click on a computer and then click here. This will often say connect if you're an end user to establish a remote connection to that lab. That's optional functionality. There's a lot of documentation, including a video on setting that up. So I'm not going to dive any deeper into that today. Another thing you can do is just get a list of all of the computer names. So I can click to view computer names here. And one thing I want you to notice here is this prefix. All of these computers have ADMS2-00 as a prefix. So just note that. I want to show you something else here in a second. Heat maps is another popular tool, especially for admins. This allows you to see which computers have been used the most in the last 24 hours or the past week or the past month. The report option here allows you to run reports either on this particular division or computer group, or if you look down below, these are computer-specific reports that will just target the computers that are in this division. And now if we go into this gear icon for settings, one thing I wanted to show you is the ability to hide the computer name prefix. So if I type that prefix, ADMS2-00, and click OK, now when I actually go to view these computer names, I just get what follows the prefix. So in many locations, that might just be 01, 02, 03, 04. By hiding that prefix, it allows you to not include the prefix in the computer name as it's displayed on the screen for end users. Location kind of refers back to the maps. I'll leave that alone for now. And I mentioned remote access. This is where the feature is configured here in the settings, but we're not going to do that right now. And then options, I'll talk about that when we're actually building our floor plan here in a minute. The last couple of icons, this one is for actually editing the floor plan itself. We'll come back to that. And then this is a refresh that just refreshes the state of the room, including any changes to the login status of computers. And then one last thing, if we scroll down, you see there's 3 icons here that kind of explain the color coding. In use is red, green is available, and out of service would be grayed out. There aren't any currently in that status. Now, technically, there is one additional status, which is off, but in the settings, you have the ability to treat off computers as just available. So if any of these are off, they're just getting the green icon because there's an option that allows you to display them that way. Again, we'll come back to that in a minute. But before we move on to creating a floor plan, let's talk just for a second about the use cases and how you might present these maps to end users. So for the most part, as designed, the original idea behind these floor plans and lab maps is for the university or higher education setting where an administrator is going to provide this to the community. And you might require authentication or you might not. And you might use the remote access functionality or you might not. But the general idea is you provide direct access to the AllSight interface for students so that as a guest or community member, they can view the campus map and look at the floor plans for the current room status. These maps can have open and closed hours. They can have a lot of other functionality here. We're going to kind of stick to the basics, and that's the general use case. I have seen use cases where corporate environments or government organizations will use these for administrators, and they don't make them available to the general community, and you can kind of keep an eye on an office or a specific location to see, are people logged in? Are they idle? What's going on with those computers? And I've even seen administrators create, rather than drawing a floor plan like we're looking at here, they would create server racks, and they would drop the servers on the racks so that they can kind of get a visual of the status of the different servers that they were maintaining. So there's lots of possibilities. We're going to kind of stick to the original intended use case here for our demo, but that's kind of what these things can be used for. And then I mentioned providing direct access to this page. Another option is to actually embed either the floor plan that we're looking at here or the larger lab map or availability map into electronic signage or a kiosk or even an app, like a campus app on a college or university. So you can click, view the availability map, find the specific lab you're looking for, come in and view that floor plan and see what you need to see before deciding whether you're going to walk across campus to go into that room. And then I've also seen the ability to actually embed the floor plans themselves. So let's take a quick look. I'm going to go to the help page. I'm going to open it in a new tab here. And if I type up here embed, then I can choose embedding web elements as a documentation page. And now this will talk about all the different ways to embed either the maps, the floor plans individually, and other objects from the web interface into another location, whether that's a SharePoint page or a corporate or university website or any other option that you might think of. This is pretty standard HTML5, fully responsive and embeddable. I can shrink and increase the size of this, and you see it dynamically adjusts as needed. So with all of that said, let's take a look at actually building a floor plan. So I'm going to come back out to the maps page. And this is a pre-built map, and the one that we were just looking at is this Adams second floor. You can see the icons there. What we're going to do is go to this new map, which we created in the previous video on the availability maps themselves, and we can see that there's just 2 items in the list. I'm going to hold Shift on my keyboard just to show you actually all of the divisions are available to add to this page. It's just that we've chosen these 2 by clicking the plus button as the 2 that we're going to work with for these demos. So again, if I hold Shift on my keyboard and click this plus, I can hide everything that I haven't decided to add to this page. All right, so looking at this 302 makerspace, we are going to go into the settings and see that makerspace is the display name, 302 makerspace is the full name of that division, and we can kind of click through and just get a general idea of the current status of this. All we've really done is added it to the map itself at this point. To create the floor plan, I'm going to click this plus icon or this pencil icon with the plus next to it. That means that a floor plan hasn't already been created. I'm not editing one. I'm actually going in to create one. That's what the plus indicates. So if I click plus, here's where I could drag a background image. So a JPEG or a PNG will work. I'm not sure all of the file formats that might work here, but certainly those 2 will work fine. In this case, I'm not going to create or drag in a background image to use. We're going to draw the whole thing from scratch. If I know the dimensions of the room, I can enter them here. For the most part, though, I can just click done, and you see there's this tape measure icon. So if I come up and actually change the arrangement of this room, it'll change. So I can drag it to get the general shape of this room and drop it when I'm ready, and this serves now as my floor plan. Okay, so let's start and look at the icons here up top. The first one is for drawing the walls. So if I click that icon, it will allow me to actually draw the wall. I can hit escape on the keyboard after clicking a location to drop it and go back and reselect it. And that allows me to leave room for like windows or doors. And I can just kind of draw this out however I want. And now we'll just come in and finish it off there. Again, hit escape. And now it's a little bit of hanging over there. So what I'm going to do is actually, while that's selected, I'm going to move it over just to kind of make things align properly and hit escape again to back out of that tool. All right. So that's the sort of the perimeter of the room. I could add additional walls. Say there's a separator in the middle of the room. Anything like that you can do with these tools. Again, escape backs out of that tool for drawing the walls. And now the next thing you'll notice is this bookmark with models. And if I open this, you see that we have a bunch of built-in icons and objects, including logos. And I'll show you toward the end of this tutorial how to include your own logo. And then you'll also see QR codes. The idea behind these QR codes is actually not for a small classroom or lab, but for a large tech center or some other location where you actually want to make it easy to pull this map up on a phone or tablet. If you drop this QR code here, this QR code actually represents the URL for this specific map. So you can scan it and pull it up and actually view it on your phone. So next thing we're going to do, we drew the walls, we've looked to see what other objects are here. We're going to go ahead and select just a simple desk object. I'm going to make it these wide desks. And one thing I want to show you is that when I place an object, I can hit Command or Control C and then V on my keyboard to paste. And now if I move the pasted object and then hit Command V again, it will create another one and another one. Okay? So just an easy way to get very straightforward, pixel perfect rows and columns here is just to be able to paste and then remember the orientation of the original and the pasted, so you can build those out. Now I could actually grab this whole row and Command C and Command V to paste that, and I could do the same sort of thing if I wanted to. Now in this particular room, we don't actually have many computers to work with. I've already got more desks than I do computers, and that's fine. I'm going to grab all of these and just kind of bring them back out to the center of the room. And maybe this separator has a few more desks or tables that don't have computers on them. We're going to come back to that space here in a second. For the moment, what I'm going to do is just drag and drop the computers. You see those green dots serve as snap points for these computers. So we're going to just drag and place these objects on the desks. And you see we don't actually have enough computers to fill all of the desks in this particular room. That's fine. And what we're going to do is actually come in and I'm going to demonstrate some of the other tools using this space over here. So this is your selector tool. If I've got the wall tool selected and I can hit escape, or I can come back and just click here and it allows me to select and move things around. If you needed to add text to this, you can use the text tool. Just select it there, drop it in place, and you can type whatever text you need. You've got some tools off here to the right that allow you to make it, choose the different font, make it bold, italicize it, or underline it. But I'm just going to delete that for now. And what we're going to do is collapse those tools for a second and look at some of these other tools. This is a shape tool, so I can select here and actually draw my own object. Let's say maybe there's a large table that doesn't exist in our object library in this side of the room. So I can draw that and drop it in. And maybe there's 4 or 5 chairs here on this next to this table. So if I go back to the object library, you see there's a chair. I can drop one in. Now this allows me to rotate it. If I hold shift, then the rotation will actually snap to specific angles. You see the angle listed there at the top, 15, 30, 45. So this lets you sort of manage the angle, whereas if I let go of shift, it just floats freely. If I hold shift, it snaps into an angle point. So let's do 90 degrees. I'm going to drag that up to my table there, Command C, Command V, and now I'm just going to place another one and then paste them on their way down. So now I can grab that whole selection, drag it to kind of center it with this table a little bit better. Use the arrow to perfect that. Now if I select the table itself, because right now the chairs are on top of the table, I can come to this three-dot menu and actually click this icon to bring to the front. So now the table is in the front, the chairs are sitting under it, and that's just kind of an example of something I can do to build my own object that maybe isn't in the object library. Now let's say I've got a room right next to this one and I'm going to need this table object again and I don't want to rebuild it. Again, if I select all of the components, click on this three-dot menu, you see there's a bunch of different things you can do here. One of them is actually to group these together. And now that they're grouped together, if I select that three-dot again, you see the group button has been replaced by a create model button. And if I click there, and let's call this long table, I can create this object as something that will now exist within my local object library. It's editable and deletable here because it's not built in, unlike the other objects which you see that are built in and are not editable or deletable. But there it is. Now, I could also come and grab the computer snap points and drop those in place as well if this happens to be a desk that I need to be able to drop computers onto. But in this case, I'm just going to get rid of those. Let's go back to cursor. I should be able to delete that, select and delete that one as well. All right. And then there's a couple of other things here worth mentioning. One is if I grab this tool, let's just select a different object type. And again, if I hold shift, I can keep that as a perfect circle. So now I've drawn maybe another round table that sits over here. And let's say for some reason I wanted to change the color or the outline of this table. That is done over here. I can select a different shade of gray, or maybe if I want to make this table kind of a light blue, I can select this. And then this is the outline color. So let's maybe we make that a darker gray. And maybe for some reason I want to make that a thicker line or no line at all. That's what this is for. So I could make that a thicker line, or maybe we want to just get rid of that line altogether. And now I've got a kind of light blue circle on my map for whatever reason. All right, I'm going to delete that for now. So if we come back to this selection tool, we just talked about the outline color and the fill color. There is an object here or a tool here that allows you to drop an image in place. So if I just click here, I can then browse to an image on my computer and drop that image right on my floor plan. Again, I'm not going to do that right now. And then the last set of tools here are for things like snapping to grid. I don't tend to use this one myself, but this allows, it basically makes a grid out of the floor plan here, and the objects will click into place as they move around the grid. And then you've got your rotation and your resizing proportionally, and then of course your tools for managing your font. All right, so I'm going to close the toolbox here, and we're going to talk briefly about the saving and the draft state of these rooms, and then we're going to have a look at the settings page and wrap up the video. So right now, if I were to leave this page, even though I haven't published, there is a draft saved. So there's an automatically saving draft which allows you to either create the floor plan over time and only publish it at the very end, or make edits after you've published it without actually publishing those edits until you're ready. So this save draft is here, but when I publish it, that sort of finalizes it and makes it something that can be actually added to the public view. So before we go into settings, what I'm going to do is back out to the maps just to show you one last thing here. If we look at that new map and we go to my list view, you can see this very first icon. This 302 makerspace is the one we've been working in. Here it is. And I can click on it and view that floor plan because I'm logged in as an administrator with the ability to edit and create. But right now, the guest account and the community account, if you're requiring authentication, still can't see that floor plan, even though I published it, because I haven't clicked this icon to make it visible to that public account. So I'm going to come back into this floor plan, and we're going to go back into edit mode. And I just want to point out there is an icon here that is only visible in edit mode, and it's this one. This one allows you to actually copy this floor plan to another location. So if I click on this, and let's say I go into my new map, and we also copy this over to 302 Anderson, we're not going to include the computer placements because there's a whole different set of computers there. But I'm going to click copy. And now this floor plan has been saved over into, on the new map, this other location. So if I go back and look at 302 Anderson now and go into the edit mode for the floor plan, here it is. It's ready and waiting for me, that entire floor plan view. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this, click publish there. I'm not going to make it visible to the guest account like I did previously, but we'll go back to maps, go back to new map, and we're going to go back into our floor plan that we've been working on. And so that is only visible after you're in edit mode for the floor plan. So if I exit edit mode, you see that that icon goes away. All right. Now, one more thing. If I go into this gear icon to go into the settings, here's the list of options. But watch when I go into edit mode for the floor plan and then go into the same gear, now there is a layout tab. So this layout tab is only visible in the settings for an individual location when you're in floor plan edit mode. Okay? So now let's step back through these and just kind of make sure we cover all the different options. I said I'd come to the options tab when we were building a floor plan, so let's look there. This visible to public viewers is the same as back on that map page when I click that square to make this visible to public or guest viewers. So that's why this is already toggled on. Public can see heat map, turns on the heat map feature for the guest account and the community account. I'll leave that off. Suppress availability for safety basically makes this room appear as if no computers are in use if there are fewer than 5 computers in use in the room. So if you've got labs that are open overnight and you don't want to provide an easy way for users to find a room that only has 1 person in it, something like that, you can turn this on, and if there's fewer than 5 people in that room, then the map view presents the room as if there's no one there at all. Okay? Based on idle sessions means for the color of the icon, rather than treating a computer that's logged in as an in-use computer, this will treat computers that are in an idle state as available. And if they're not in an idle state, then they're in use. This is for locations where you might have a generic account that's always logged in, and users come and go, they sit down, they use the computer without having to log in, they walk away. With this on, it's available if it's in an idle state, and it's not available if it's in use or if it's not in an idle state. Okay? I mentioned previously the use distinct icon for off computers. In this case, we see this is on by default, and the blue icon is visible for off computers. If I turn this off, when we refresh and save, then these blue icons will be green, meaning available. All right? And then there is the remote links. We're not using remote access. We're going to leave that off. And then we can look back at layout. This is what popped up when, or some of these options are the ones that popped up when we first went to create this floor plan. But in this case, you see there's some different things we can do. We can make the background of the floor plan itself a little bit darker or lighter. We can drag and drop or manage the background image and scale that image from here if we were using one. We could make manual edits to the dimensions of the room. And then there's a few other options here. Showing unplaced computers means, do I want to see all of the computers that are in this room, even if I haven't dropped them into a desk. And what will happen with this on is if there's any computers that I haven't actually placed, they'll just show up underneath the floor plan as a list of computers. Unplaced devices, this is for the monitors or other objects that are part of this list over here, but haven't actually been placed on the room. So if you see monitors in this list, you can kind of ignore them and leave this option turned off unless you actually want to present those monitors as assets on the floor plan. And the reason those exist, monitors are in this list, is because sometimes customers don't actually have a computer in these locations, but instead these are BYOD locations where users will bring their own computer and set it on the desk and plug into a university or company-owned monitor. So you can drop those monitors instead of computers on these desks, and that's what the unplaced devices would do, is just kind of show them in a list if you haven't actually dropped them on the desk. Okay. And show the legend. Again, this is for the color codes for these icons being listed down at the bottom. And when I exit edit mode, I'll show you where those are again. All right, so I'm going to click OK, and then we're going to publish this again to exit the edit mode. And what we should see is down below here, we see those different colored icons. So if I turn this back on and refresh the page, now we should see the blue icon indicates that the computer is off. All right. So that's basically everything when it comes to building the floor plans themselves. But there's one more thing I want to talk about, and that is if we go to the settings page and to this maps tab, this is where you saw that logo in the list of available objects to place on the floor plan. This is where you can upload that logo to make it available as sort of branding for your maps, especially if you're going to embed them somewhere else. And then down here you can see that you can actually change the colors that are used for the different computer statuses. So in use by default is this red. Sometimes we say, I'd rather reverse these and have in use be green and available be red, or however else you might decide you want to do this. You can kind of control the color for each of these different statuses. And then there's some other options here that you can check out. Hope this has been helpful. Please reach out to support@sassafras.com if you have any questions or feedback. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching.